When people think of Wall Street, their minds often drift to its towering skyscrapers, bustling stock exchanges, and the relentless pulse of the global economy. Yet, beneath this polished exterior lies a hidden history, a story that rewrites much of what we know about its origins. Did you know that Wall Street, the very symbol of modern capitalism, is built on foundations deeply entwined with the brutal legacy of slavery? It's a fact that often eludes history books, but remains etched in the economic veins of the United States. Peeling back the layers of time reveals a world where financial institutions thrived not just on commerce, but on human lives. Wall Street wasn't always about stocks and bonds. It was a marketplace in the truest sense of the word. Here, enslaved people were auctioned, traded, and insured. The wealth disparity we see today, between towering corporations and marginalized communities, was seated in these dark transactions. If you've ever walked the streets of New York, you've tread upon an unspoken legacy. This forgotten narrative isn't just about looking back. It's about connecting the dots between history and the present. How did the slave trade mold the American economy? What role did banks and insurance companies play in perpetuating this system? These are questions that demand answers, and they lead us to explore the shadowy intersections of capitalism, systemic racism, and the enduring impact of hidden history. The roots of Wall Street stretch back to the 17th century, a time when it served as much more than just a financial hub. Originally, this area was a bustling marketplace where goods of all kinds were exchanged, including human lives. Yes, enslaved people were openly bought and sold here, fueling the burgeoning economy of the colonial era. Interestingly, the very name Wall Street originates from a wooden barrier constructed by Dutch settlers to protect their settlement, an unassuming yet stark reminder of the early struggles and inequities that shaped New York. Though many associate slavery with the American South, New York was far from innocent. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the city thrived on an economy deeply intertwined with slavery. Its ports welcomed ships from the transatlantic slave trade, and its businesses, banks, insurance companies, and traders, relied on the forced labor that sustained industries like cotton and sugar. Banks lent money to southern plantation owners, while insurance companies profited by underwriting ships transporting enslaved individuals. The economic foundations of New York, and by extension Wall Street, were built on this grim reality. The intertwining of slavery and finance didn't just stop at auctions. Even as New York evolved, its institutions continued to benefit from this exploitative system. Some of the city's most influential banks and financial empires trace their origins to these transactions, silently carrying this legacy into the present. One can't help but wonder how much of the wealth and power concentrated in Wall Street today is a direct inheritance from these colonial-era dealings. This unsettling history sets the stage for understanding the full economic role slavery played in shaping modern America. Wall Street didn't just observe the horrors of slavery from the sidelines, it was a central player in monetizing human lives. In the 19th century, banks in New York provided the financial lifeline that southern plantation owners needed to sustain their operations. Loans were issued with enslaved people listed as collateral, a chilling reminder of how deeply embedded slavery was in the financial fabric of America. Insurance companies also stepped in, protecting these investments from losses, such as the death or escape of enslaved individuals, ensuring that profit was always prioritized over humanity. The cotton trade served as a lifeblood for the global economy, and Wall Street eagerly latched onto its lucrative potential. Cotton, picked by enslaved laborers in the South, fed the mills of Europe and fueled industrialization. New York banks facilitated these transactions, turning raw materials into financial empires. Major institutions like J.P. Morgan and the Bank of America profited from their roles in financing plantations and brokering cotton deals, further entrenching Wall Street's dependence on slavery's spoils. This unholy alliance between Northern finance and Southern slavery wasn't merely transactional, it was transformative. It allowed Wall Street to solidify its position as an economic powerhouse while laying the groundwork for modern corporations. The intertwining of the cotton trade and systemic racism fostered a wealth disparity that echoes through time, raising an uncomfortable truth. The prosperity of many was built on the suffering of millions. This economic entanglement compels us to examine its lasting impact on today's financial institutions. The financial empires of today owe much to the wealth generated during the era of slavery, a fact often overshadowed by tales of ambition and innovation. Families and institutions that profited from the exploitation of enslaved labor funneled those riches into ventures that shaped modern corporations and banks. The inherited wealth from that time served as a launching pad for many of the financial giants we recognize today. However, the glaring inequities created by this system remain deeply etched into the economic fabric of society, perpetuating disparities that continue to affect marginalized communities. The systemic racism birthed from these practices has left a long shadow over the modern financial system. Generations of exclusion from wealth-building opportunities have left Black communities disproportionately impacted by poverty and economic instability. Meanwhile, many of the institutions that once profited from slavery thrived without acknowledging their role in this exploitation. While some companies, like J.P. Morgan and Aetna, have issued apologies in recent years, these gestures feel symbolic when compared to the enduring consequences of their historical actions. The denial of this history has allowed systemic inequalities to persist unchecked. By omitting the connection between slavery and economic success from mainstream narratives, society has failed to address the root causes of wealth disparity. Imagine the power of integrating these truths into education, policy, and public consciousness. Doing so would illuminate the structural barriers that have long held certain groups back, opening the door to more equitable economic opportunities for all. Uncovering this hidden history is not just about accountability. It's a step toward meaningful change. By understanding how financial institutions capitalized on slavery, we can start dismantling the structures that uphold racial inequality today. How can we reimagine these systems to foster inclusion and equity? The answers lie not in erasing the past, but in learning from it to build a future rooted in justice and fairness. The story of Wall Street reveals a sobering truth. Economic prosperity often carries the weight of untold injustices. For centuries, the financial empires built on this iconic avenue were supported by systems of exploitation, with slavery as a cornerstone. The immense fortunes generated during this era weren't just numbers on a ledger, they were the product of human suffering, creating an economic foundation that continues to benefit some while disadvantaging many. Acknowledging this history is the first step toward understanding the inequalities deeply embedded in modern capitalism. This isn't just about history books or academic discourse. It's about reckoning with the systemic racism that persists today. The legacy of slavery is alive in the wealth disparities we see across racial lines, where Black communities still struggle to close the gaps created centuries ago. Institutions that profited from these systems have historically evaded accountability, leaving scars that manifest in both economic and social inequalities. By confronting these hidden narratives, we have an opportunity to reframe the conversation around wealth and power. Wall Street's role in perpetuating systemic racism doesn't exist in isolation. It's a thread woven into the broader fabric of American society. The financial systems that grew from slavery laid the groundwork for wealth accumulation among a privileged few while millions were excluded. Even today, the echoes of these practices are evident in discriminatory lending, unequal access to financial resources, and the barriers that prevent marginalized communities from achieving financial stability. Recognizing these patterns is crucial to dismantling them. As uncomfortable as it may be, we must question the sanitized versions of history that glorify success without acknowledging its human cost. What does it mean to celebrate prosperity when its foundations are rooted in exploitation? The narratives we choose to amplify and those we ignore shape not only our understanding of the past, but also the values we carry into the future. The question isn't whether we should address this history, it's whether we can afford not to. But reflection alone won't create change. The challenge lies in transforming this awareness into action, Whether it's advocating for systemic reforms, supporting financial equity initiatives, or educating others about these hidden histories, the responsibility belongs to us all. Imagine a world where financial systems are built on principles of fairness and inclusivity. That vision starts with you. How will you use this knowledge to challenge the status quo and inspire a better tomorrow?